Today's speaker was named to his current position in February of 2005. He has been with the City of Riverside since 1988 and previously held Utilities Deputy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at that. He's been around as long as I have. He's been with the City of Riverside since 1988 and previously held the Utilities Deputy Director and Chief Financial Officer, as well as City Controller positions. He managed design, construction, and initial implementation of several innovative and award-winning photovoltaic projects and Riverside's first ever design-build project, the John W. North Water Treatment Plant. He assured continued delivery of municipal utility services individually and through joint powers agencies with federal, state, and local governments. In 2010, he was appointed by previous California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger to the state's Health Professions Education Foundation Board of Trustees. It is my pleasure to introduce the General Manager of the Riverside Public Utilities, Dave Wright.
Well, thank you very much. I want to discuss something called the Riverside Transmission Reliability Project today, but I want to start off with some good work that's been done by some of our utility employees.
In the wake of the devastation from Hurricane Sandy, many residents in the East Coast were without power for a number of weeks. Riverside Public Utilities responded by sending workers who volunteered their time to help those in need. Pat Hull tells us how this came about.
Riverside Public Utilities is part of the American Public Power Association, and as part of that membership participates in a mutual aid agreement with other agencies across the country. And Long Island Power Authority sent out a request to all of the member agencies for assistance, and Riverside chose to respond. All of the equipment was flown back on military transport out of March Air Force Base. Equipment and personnel flew on the same military transports.
Once the team of volunteers arrived, they were met with some tough weather conditions. However, this did not prevent them from helping the local residents. Lineman Rick Austin tells us his experience during this time.
When we got there, people were definitely meeting us out there on the blocks. They had been out of power for 2 weeks or more, and they were just really wanting to know, okay, you guys are here, how long is it going to be? Are you going to leave before we get back on? You know, please don't leave. You know, whatever we can do to help you, we'll help you. As linemen, we'll build to sit up here and to adapt and handle whatever situations that are thrown upon us, and that's what we did.
Yet with all the obstacles thrown at them, the team was still able to get power up for the community. Frank Paz describes for us the reaction he received from the people in the neighborhood.
Right before we had the power up, it was like everybody in the whole block would come out and stand out there and watch and just wait for the power to come out. And once we got their power back up here, it was cheering, clapping, coming up, thanking us. I had one lady come up and start crying in front of us that she's been out of power for 14 days and she's been cold because all their heaters were ran by the electric. It's a great thing that RPU can do this, because when we're in Long Island, there was 1,800 linemen from all over the nation out there alone that other utilities sent people from all around the United States, even Canada were out there. We even had a utility send a crew out there from Hawaii. So, I mean, it brings a lot of pride, you know, to send Riverside out there to help out on a disaster like that, and I hope they continue to do that.
This really shows the dedication of the Riverside Public Utility employees and our culture for customer service, safety, and reliability of electrical service.
Thank you. I'm really proud of our employees and the dedication that they showed by going back there. I don't worry so much about Hurricane Sandy, but I worry about our version, which I think of as Hurricane Sandy Andreas. But we are going to, at some point, we'll have an issue or a problem here, and RTRP is going to help mitigate some of that risk. Now, I'm a really visual person, so I have these yo-yos, and imagine this yo-yo being Riverside, and imagine the line being our single connection to the state grid. Now, if there's a disaster or emergency, Riverside's SOL. We got some problems, so I don't want to deal with those problems quite as difficult as they could be at that point, in that if we have that one connection severed, it can be weeks or even months till all of us get back in power. Now, we've already been sued on this project, and I will tell you that the city attorney told me my deposition couldn't consist of a yo-yo and a pair of scissors. So I've got some facts to share on this project, and then we'll talk about what some of the opposing parties are saying on our response to them. So we get power from all over the western United States, as does everyone in Southern California. As you get closer to Riverside, our power comes from lines through a number of different cities. You know, Yorba Linda, Corona, Norco, Eastvale, Jurupa Valley, San Bernardino, Rialto. We are part of a grid, and everybody gets power from lines that go through somebody else's city. And if we want economic development, we're going to continue to have power. And I just don't mean Riverside, I mean this whole region. We're going to have power lines that bring power from the source to the end-use customer. Now, we get all our power through this one station called Vista that's up in Grand Terrace. That's the closest connection to the state grid. And every kilowatt that comes off the state grid comes through that one substation. Looks like that. It's really big, 2 transformers. Those are people that you see. So those, just the technical description is those are really big. This is our load. So our load is what we consider our peak load during the year, is the hour when people are using the most power. And we have to build our system for that hour. And you can see it was ramping up, and then the recession actually helped this issue, not anything else, but this issue where 2008 usage went back down. But as you can see, every year since 2008, usage has been increasing, and it's going to keep increasing through the end of that graph, which is 2017. That red line equals the import capacity that we have. So everything above that line is being provided by peaker plants, which you can only run about 10% of the time during the year, and which eventually will be maxed out, and we just won't have any more power. So some problems can happen, and this next picture is of the exact same type of substation as the Vista substation. Something can happen. That's a fire there, can be struck by lightning. We actually had one of those big transformers fail, but it happened during the winter a few years ago. If it had happened during the summer, we would have had rolling blackouts for several days until they could replace those. So we have this urgent need for a second connection to the state grid. And I say urgent, and I have to say it's been urgent for 40 years since the utility bought the land for the substation where this connection will take place to the city. But it's getting to the point we can't kick that can down the road anymore. We had a blackout in October of 2007. Some lines that were above the utility lines that the city uses burned, fell on our lines, and the entire city was without power for about 4 hours. To thank Edison for their work to get us back online. But it's really weird to be without power and realize people are driving through traffic intersections. There's nowhere to get food or buy anything anymore because everything's working off computers. And luckily the power came on just before lunch. If it had not been out for a lot longer, we'd have had school kids without ways to get home, or literally walking through intersections that didn't have traffic signals working, which really worries me. So RTRP is a joint project with Edison, and I shortened Riverside Transmission Reliability Project to RTRP. It's going to be about $200 million. The City of Riverside is the lead agency for all the environmental impact work. It consists of 10 miles of line, 5 miles that connect up by the 60 and the 15 freeway, go through Jurupa Valley, and then come across to through Riverside. A couple substations in Riverside and some lines in Riverside. Here's some benefits that will happen and occur from that to the region, not just Riverside. We can bring more renewables to the area. We can provide power to critical facilities. We can help operate what's called the Mills Filtration Plant, which provides the drinking water to customers, and then the Riverside Regional Water Quality Control Plant, which processes all of the stuff that comes out of the households and businesses from Riverside customers, Jurupa Valley customers, some people in Rubidoux as well. We went through a major route selection process, and that block in the middle represents the piece of land kind of by the wastewater treatment plant down near kind of behind the airport by the river in Van Buren, where the connection will be to the city's utility. We looked at a number of routes. Here were the first routes. Remember that route on the right, because I'm going to come back to that. That's along the Santa Ana River. Then there was a route along Van Buren and a route along Bain. We had a lot of input, a lot of feedback, and the final preferred route is this route, again, that connects, goes down the freeway in Jurupa Valley, cuts across, goes kind of above the river near La Sierra and connects to that substation. There's a second phase, which are smaller lines which go through the city of Riverside. So that route I told you to remember, it is the route when we bring this forward that the citizens of Jurupa Valley say you need to look at the eastern or Santa Ana River route. We like that a lot better than the one that goes along the freeway. And that was studied beyond what we needed to study because we knew there was so much pushback on the preferred route and so much stress to look at this route. That route affects Jurupa Valley, Colton, Grand Terrace, and Rialto. There's a tremendously increased amount of environmental impacts. There's a lot of environmental and special species and Endangered Species Act issues. In fact, this take permit means we have to go out and kill some endangered species if we built this route. Beyond that, it's also some potential impact to Native American historical sites. When I look at kind of the just basics, you know, I don't have to be a civil engineer, which I'm not, and I don't have to be an electrical engineer, which I'm not, to know you don't build a power line in the middle of a river, okay? A river that has washed out Van Buren Bridge a couple times, you just don't do it. And this requires that we build dams and levees, impact the river flow, and at some point, that's going to be flooded away, and we're going to have live power lines in the middle of the Santa Ana River. And that just doesn't seem like a very smart idea. So that route, again, with all this extra study, was considered inferior and rejected. There really is no project alternative. There's no lines from the state grid running in Riverside. We have to go outside the city. And if we don't do this, we are eventually, not in the next 2 years, but sometime eventually, we're going to have to limit building permits. We are not going to be able to provide power to everyone we need. There's going to be problems with annexations, and eventually it'll be rolling blackouts. And really, these peaker plants and solar energy can't be utilized to backfill this need. And again, the reliability, we've already had a problem. We've already had the whole city blacked out. Now, we brought this to the city's planning commission and a public hearing before the Riverside City Council, and I'm going to go through the opposing comments in kind of as they were grouped by the people in the audience. There were about 12 hours of opposing comments through these different meetings, and I'd like to just go through. So the audience said there was no chance for public input. Well, there were 9 meetings, 3 in Jurupa Valley, 200,000 mailings that included a website and a phone number. We met with the city councils of Jurupa, Norco, and Eastvale. We issued the EIR and we held it until Jurupa Valley incorporated. Then we were only required to circulate that for 45 days, but we extended it to 120 days because Jurupa Valley had asked us to. We had their public works director came over to our offices and sat and looked at all the documents, and then it went to the Planning Commission and City Council. They said Riverside shouldn't be the lead agency. Well, more than half the project is inside the city of Riverside, and CEQA says if the agency that's basically managing or building the project and has more of it, and basically they're the ones that have to be the lead agency, even if some of it's built in another city. And some of the comments were CPUC should be this, and CPUC actually has told us we'll take a different role on this. So there's a lot of arguments against that. You should use solar instead, okay? The first one is another one of those Dave things where there's some obvious stuff that makes this a problem. You only can use solar during the day. We have 40 megawatts of solar, but they're big solar projects, and they're not in the city of Riverside, so you have to bring that solar energy through a connection to the state grid. And one of those peak days occurred in a weird summer storm where there was no sun and there was lots of wind and in fact some tornadoes around. So you can't count on the sun when you need it. There's going to be a hidden impact to rates. No, there's not. We've already accounted for all the cost in our rate plan. We want to sell excess power. Well, the only excess power we sell is a little bit from our peakers once in a while, and we already have enough connection to the grid. We don't need that. There's a better alternative, which they call Route 5, which appears to be right next to that eastern Santa Ana River route. It's going to require a big substation to be built in a different city than Jurupa Valley. It would require one to be built in Colton or Grand Terrace. Doesn't provide that risk aversion that we need for a significant geographical separation. Bigger deal there, it requires a wider easement. So the lines are going to have to either be pushed farther into the river or farther into residential neighborhoods. And there's a whole bunch of other issues there. We should tie to a southern route near Paris. It's going to go through a whole bunch of cities. It's going to be 25 miles long instead of 10 miles, going to require another substation. A whole lot larger environmental impact there. Underground it. Well, that's 5 to 10 times more expensive. There's only one little area by the airport being undergrounded, and you just can't underground it because you want to. Not just us, but everybody in the state will pay higher costs from undergrounding that, and it creates a bigger environmental impact to underground it. The CPUC is against this. The CPUC sent us comments. We answered them all. They said, you're fine. It's going to create dangerous magnetic fields. Well, the electromagnetic fields it causes is the same as a baby monitor. So it's not, there's no studies that connect that level of EMF to any problems, and we follow the PUC guidelines for that. It's going to ruin community development in Jurupa Valley. And this has come up through the CEQA process. It's not part of CEQA. There are avenues that Jurupa Valley can interact with Riverside about community development, but we pay fair market value for any right-of-way. Causes awful visual impacts. Really, the visual impact is primarily going to be along the Santa Ana River in La Sierra, and it does impact a golf course. That golf course is going to see some visual impacts, and they're going to see some construction work for about 3 months there. But truly the long-term impact is some visual impact to the golf course, but there's no hole or range closures. It damages one of their marketplaces. Well, we talked to this marketplace and we moved the lines behind the marketplace between it and the freeway. So there's no impact to the marketplace anymore. So what's happening now? We've got to be moving along this, this process. It's going to come to council on February 5th for consideration. The opposing comments that I just presented will be discussed ad nauseum. I mean, we've got to go through them in extreme detail. Sorry, council members. They'll consider approving the EIR. Then it goes to the CPUC. And with this breakneck speed, we'll have this approved and in service in 2019. So I would really like to thank the Chamber for their support. They've been at the Planning Commission. There's been representatives at the public hearing before the council. I would really beg of you to come to the February 5th council meeting. They need to hear the positive support from the residents and businesses of Riverside. And with that, I thank you for your time.